What is up, Need for Speed Racers? It is I, your wheelman, Alex Cornnut. I'm here today with the top 5 S Plus meta cars, plus a ton of honorable mentions with all the builds for each. So no matter what your style is, what you're looking for, and if you have a preference on what car you like to drive, hopefully I've got it here for you. These are the good ones. I've got a lot to cover, so we are going to dig right into it. I'll be just transparent 100%. The best car in Need for Speed Unbound, period, is the REGERA. So what color do you want? There's hundreds of colors, so I guess you could have this car hundreds of different ways, but honestly, it's the best. It's not close to the best. It's not a close second anybody in there. It is holding every single record that we have in the Cornnut crew. It holds every single world record in the video game. There is no better car. It should have its own class. People say they should have it nerfed, whatever. I kind of disagree with that. I think we should elevate some of the other cars up to where this is at. But it's one of the best cars in the world, and because of that, it being the best car in the world and in the game, it makes sense to me. So, period. If you want the best car in the game, you learn to drive the REGERA. It used to be very easy to drive. It's had some patches, it's had some updates. It's tougher to drive now. It's a little squirrely. If you think you're fast, go drive this car on Apex Predator. Let me know when you do better than 420. That's cruising. It's not easy to do. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm so good. The REGERA is easy mode. No, it's not. Go fast on some of the more technical tracks and let me know, because there's other cars that are easier to drive, but they have less power and they are slower to accelerate, and so it might make a little more sense why they're that way. But I'll stop rambling. Let's get into it. Let me give you the REGERA build. It's pretty straightforward, and then we're going to go through a bunch, and I've got one car that has got parts on it that chances are none of you guys have seen, and it's going to be released in a speed pass, or it'll be paid DLC at some point, and it's not even announced yet. So that's kind of a teaser. You guys will see that here in a minute. But let's dig into it. The Koenigsegg REGERA, the best car in A+, period, is awesome. It's fast. The engine that we use is the only engine that comes in it, so it's the V8 hybrid, 5.1 liter. The parts, it's Elite Platinum, all of it. You can't change the first 4, so that gives you the option to change what forced induction you want to go with. We go with the screw. It gives you the best on the low end, and the car's got the top speed anyway. It says it does 254. Need for Speed Unbound has an artificial cap of 245 miles per hour. Sometimes with a 3-bar, you'll see 246 or 247, but that's it. So any car that says above that, it might have the capability of it, but it's never going to get there because the game is capped at that. So keep that in mind. The Bugatti says it goes faster. This says it's faster. Nah, 245 is where it's going to go. And this car with 1 gear is incredibly great to drive. And once you learn how to Tron turn and skill with it, it's the way to go. So throw on the screw supercharger and get the most out of it. Elite Platinum bottle and NOS, because we are in S+, so we throw all the parts at it. Elite Platinum road suspension, absolutely, no questions asked. That's the way to go. It's all road racing in S+. Elite Platinum brakes, why not? Elite Platinum grip tires. That's what we all use to get the most out of this car, to set those world record pace. Our guy Seike is cracked. He's doing like a 406 on Apex Predator. So be 15 seconds slower than that and then let me know. If you break 430, you're good. You break 420, you're really good. So keep that in mind, you guys. Elite Platinum clutch, that's what comes in it, but we really don't care because it comes from the factory with a 1-speed gearbox. So just launch, set it, forget it. Guys, if you're not playing manual yet, this car is easy to learn. There's no difference. Alright, Elite Platinum diff, that way you can get the most out of the slider, but honestly it doesn't matter, and we'll go over that together in a second. Auxiliary nitrous drift, nitrous grip, that way you can get the most out of those micro drifts and Tron turn and loop this thing around and just go send it. Handling, slide that slider all the way to the left, full 100% grip. Full Beyonce, to the left, we out here. Steering sensitivity, I like 2 clicks high, that's where I put this car. It's sweet for me, I like it a lot. Downforce, you can go all the way high or all the way low. All the way low is where most of us run it. It's a little harder to drive, but it helps accelerate on the big end. So if you're good with the car, run it low. If you're struggling with the car, it seems a little squirrely on you, run it high, see if that helps you. Either way, it's going to be like that. It's just got a lot of power in the car, and it's the best car in the game. So set it up the best way that you can and learn to drive that, as opposed to nerfing the car artificially and trying to learn a worse version of it. Traction control is off. Drift entry, you can run gas tap or brake tap. I run brake tap. That seems to be the best for me and a lot of the other guys that run this car. That is the best car in the video game, the Koenigsegg Regera. If you were looking for the best car, you can close the video now. I've got a lot of other cars that are 2nd, 3rd through 10th, but this is the one. You cannot argue this point because there's no other car that even comes close when it comes to the leaderboards and the records books. It says 250 top speed, it doesn't do it. 245 hard cap. 1558 for the horsepower and 1904 with the torque. That screw really gets us there, and this thing is rowdy. It's a lot of fun to drive. If you don't have it yet, if you're looking to find out what car you get this one so you can win your S Plus races and then save up your money and go buy some of the other ones that I'm going to show you here in a minute. That's going to be it for this car. Let's move on to another one that I've got in S Plus. And what color is your Bugatti? This is a really pretty solid car. It is the most expensive in the game, far and away. I don't think it's worth it, you guys. If you've got money to burn and you want to have clout, buy it. It's great. That being said, you guys, it's really only good on the really good top speed tracks like Big O, Hot Pursuit, just some of the ones where you're gonna really sit on the rev limiter and just carry it out, because this car is 245 capped. It gets there. It's one of the few cars that actually does. And so that being the case, it's worth having in the garage. But there's a lot of other cars I would put in front of this, but I know that there's going to be a ton of people that want to see these two. So get the Regera, get the Bugatti knocked out, and then we'll move forward and I'll show you all the rest. So let me show you the build for it. It's pretty straightforward. At S Plus, we just jam in all the parts and go. The engine that you run it is the stock engine that comes with it. That's the 8.0 liter W16. So it's got 16 cylinders and they're in a W configuration. So it's pretty wild. There's a lot going on. It's like they took two V8 motors and crammed them side by side, and it's a pretty special vehicle. For the parts, Elite Platinum for the first 4, and you have to put those in, so don't worry about that. Once again, it gives you the option of forced induction. We're going to default to the screw supercharger. It's going to give you the most low-end torque, which is where this car actually struggles the most. It's fine on the big end, but it's a little slower on the launch and everything else, and so throwing the screw in there is going to help you out. Guys, if you want to throw in the turbo, you can. It doesn't help anything. It doesn't get more horsepower. It doesn't give more torque, and so that being the case, you run the screw, get the most out of it, and have a good day. Elite Platinum bottle and NOS, we're in S Plus. Make sure you get those parts. Elite Platinum road suspension, that's going to be pretty much the standard for all of the S Plus builds. Elite Platinum brakes, because why not? This is a very heavy car. You want to be able to slow it down. Elite Platinum grip tires, that's a preference thing. Some guys like to run the roads. I will be transparent. There is no drifting in S Plus right now. If you're a drifter, you can try different stuff, see what you like it, and you might beat some people. I'm not saying it's like you can't win being a drifter, but there is no drift conversion of any car that has set any records in S Plus, and so that is not the meta. Elite Platinum clutch, because you're going to want to have that. This car does have a lot of gears. And then when it comes to the transmission, you can run the 7 or you can run the 6. They both are going to get you to that cap of 245. That's a preference thing. I leave it stock to save yourself the money, but I tested it with both. 7th gear is kind of like a running gear. You really don't need it, so you might throw in the 6-speed just so you don't accidentally shift into 7th, because when you do, you're actually going to start slowing down. So keep that in mind. You might, if you got a little extra money, just buy the Pro, and so that way you're just capped at 6th gear and you don't accidentally throw it into a gear that's going to be hurting you. Elite Platinum diff, why not? Elite Platinum everything else, but honestly guys, you can do just the Sport Bronze. I do recommend always putting in a diff. I think it's placebo effect, but just having a part there as opposed to the Iron Basic one, I don't know, mentally I do better with that, but you guys do you. Auxiliary, those don't change guys. Nitrous drift, nitrous grip, that's going to give you the best opportunity to get the most out of your micro drifts, to pack up that nitrous and get as high a top speed as you can. Save your nitrous for the big end on this car. Once you click into 5th and 6th, that's when you're going to want to use it, so that way you can accelerate up to 245 and carry the car through. Bugatti Chiron Super Sport 261. 245 is where it's going to cap you. 1480 on the horsepower and 1225 on the torque. We just looked at the Regera. It's got a lot more horsepower and a lot more torque. That's why it's definitely superior. It handles a little better too, but it has so much more power and it's a lighter car. It's kind of a win-win across the board. But if you guys are wanting the Bugatti, that's how to set it up. It's pretty solid. For the handling, Slide that slider 100% to the grip, always. That's what we do here. Steering sensitivity, 2 clicks high. Downforce, run it all the way high, run it all the way low. It really doesn't matter. It changes that top speed, but you're never going to see either of those. So because this car seems to struggle a little bit in the corners, I thought downforce being a little high was better for me, but once again, that's a preference thing. It doesn't affect the overall build at all. Traction control off, drift entry, I run brake tab. All right, that's the Bugatti Chiron. Now that we got the 2 big bangers out of the way, let's go to some other ones that you guys maybe have not expected or not seen. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the Infiniti Q60. I'm not going to say it's in the top 5, but it is one of the few cars that will actually do 245 miles per hour. And so if you're looking for an off-meta car that has got the legs, this is it. You'll surprise a lot of people with it. I'll be transparent, it's not easy to drive. You'll get a little bit sideways and then it'll just decide that you're going off the track. And so keep that in mind. It's a hard one to drive, but it is pretty fast and it is fun to pull out when you're running against off-meta people or people that just aren't at your skill level. Pull out something different in the garage and just go beat them in an Infiniti. It's the only Infiniti in the game, so it's kind of fun to have. All right, the reason this car is so incredible is because it is the Bugatti engine. It is the W16 8.0 liter. It's huge. It would never fit in there in real life, let's be honest, but it is the almost last engine. You could put a couple others in here, but they don't go there. This one's got the power, it's got the legs, and it's got the exact same horsepower and torque as the Bugatti, so that's why it goes where it goes. For the parts, Elite Platinum, all of them. This engine forces the first 4 to be Elite Plat. It's the same build as the Bugatti, that's why we're here. So screw supercharger, that's the way to go. You really want this car to get out of the hole. That's kind of where it struggles. If you find it to be a little too rowdy, you might put in the single turbo. Just try that. If you find it to be rowdy, the single turbo is going to help you out. You guys can kind of ignore that hard cap of where it says 236, 237. This will do 245. Yeah, on Big O, it gets there, but single turbo does take some power out, so I'm always going to recommend you guys get the screw. Elite Platinum bottle of nitrous, that's what we do here. Elite Platinum road suspension. Elite Platinum brakes. Elite Platinum grip tires. I'm assuming you guys are starting to see a pattern here. Elite Platinum clutch for sure. And then your transmission, you're going to run the Super 7-speed transmission. The 8-speed just adds an extra running gear that doesn't take you anywhere. It's just an extra gear in the training you don't need. I am going to recommend you go with the 7-speed and not the 6. It felt better with the 7, the way the gear ratios were. You can run either. They're both going to get you to the same top speed, but I think the 7 was better. The 6, with the way the gear ratios change, it gets you a better 0 to 60 because first gear is a little longer. Keep that in mind. So this is going to be a preference thing. Guys, this car is not meta, but it is really fast in S+, and so that's why I want to bring it to you. It's not bad on Big O. You can go quite fast in it. It's got the legs. So if you're playing with it, maybe drop the $7,000 and play with the Pro. Do the 6 or the 7 and just kind of feel it out. Elite Platinum diff, absolutely. And then auxiliary is nitrous drift, nitrous grip. The reason we put that Elite Platinum diff is because this car only goes to 80% grip. So you're going to slide the slider all the way to the left, and it's not enough. If this car was full 100% grip, it'd feel pretty good. But with it being 80, it's kind of rowdy. So be aware, if you guys are dropping the money on this, it's a rowdy beast. It is hard to control. So, you know, just keep that in mind. Steering sensitivity for me, I run 2 clicks high. Downforce all the way high to try to keep the car planted. If you run it all the way low, it does a little bit better in the big end, but it's even crazier to control. So do you, Pikachu. Traction control on with this car. On. Big asterisk on. It really helps this car a lot. Otherwise, it's just insane to drive. It's one of the few cars where I'm actually going to tell you to put traction control on for it. Especially if you're an automatic player, you want that. And then drift entry, I run brake tap. That way I can micro drift. Guys, that is going to be the Infiniti Q60S. 236 top speed. It'll do better than that. It gets all the way up to 245 with some boost. 1480 for the horsepower and 1225 for the torque. That matches the Bugatti Chiron. So we're basically a different skin on a Bugatti engine, and it's pretty fun to drive. All right, let's move on to some other really good cars. The Lamborghini Countach 2021. Great car. We just got a new body kit with it. No changes to the car came with that body kit, so it is the same as it was prior. But It's still a very good car. I really like running it. It's very stable. It's very fast. It's not as fast on the big end as the Bugatti, but it's definitely good to drive, very good to control. You can go beat pubs up in this car for sure. I'd say it's in the top 5 best S Plus cars. So the build for this car is the stock engine that it comes with. That's the 6.5 liter V12. For the parts, the first 4 are going to remain Elite Platinum because you cannot change them. You go in, you get to pick your forced induction. Guys, we're running the screw. The screw is the best for overall acceleration. That's the one you want to put in the car. It gives you the most out of the hole. And on most tracks, you're not just going to the floor full speed the whole time. You are going to be turning and needing to accelerate, so that screw is going to help you out. The turbo does not give you any additional top speed. If there was a different forced induction that would bring the car up to a higher top speed, it would be the single turbo. It does give us a little more horsepower, about 38, but we are sacrificing about 40 foot-pounds of torque. That's not worth. Grab the screw, put it in there. That's the way to go, you guys, for sure. Elite Platinum bottle and NOS, as we do. We're in S Plus, it's Elite Platinum everything. Elite Platinum road suspension, Elite Platinum brakes, and Elite Platinum grip tires. You are going to pair up the Elite Platinum clutch. Make sure you put it in there. You don't have to. The gold feels pretty good, but if you're in S Plus, spend the money. Set up your car all the way. And then for your transmission, there is no benefit to having the 8. It's an extra gear that doesn't take you anywhere. Like, literally changes none of the stats. No 0 to 60, no nothing. It just makes the top end. You have an extra gear that doesn't get you up to speed. So run the 7-speed. It's going to be better for you guys overall. Elite Platinum differential is what I put in all the S Plus cars, but guys, you can run just the Sport Bronze. The car will get to full grip, no problem. Auxiliary, nitrous drift, nitrous grip, so you can micro drift. A lot of the Cornnut crew's got a lot of time in this car. It is very good. We ran it for Copium. It's a lot of fun to drive. 100% grip. Slide that slider all the way to the left. Full Beyonce. We out here. Steering sensitivity 2 clicks high. That's preference for me. If you guys are finding your cars to be a little rowdy, back that down. See what you do there. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to do anything other than change the way the car, like when you press the thumbstick all the way over, it changes how fast the wheels move. And so if you're moving them really fast and the car's twitching and you're losing control, back the steering sense down so that way when you hold the thumbstick all the way over, the tires are a little slower to turn, and that's gonna help you with that. Traction control, or excuse me, downforce all the way low. Help the car get on the big end. It's pretty planted. You're not gonna have any troubles driving it, so with it being low, it helps get on that top speed a little better for you. Traction control off, and drift entry, I run brake tap. Guys, that is the 2021 Lamborghini Countach LPI 800-4. 233 for the top speed. It'll get there, but it doesn't go any faster than that. 1103 on the horsepower, which is pretty solid, and 753 on the torque. I think the reason the car is pretty easy to drive is because even with the screw, it doesn't have a ton of torque, and so it doesn't have a tendency to get rowdy. But it is a very good car. It looks really sweet, and it sounds really good. So keep that in mind. If you're wanting to build out a good S Plus car that's not the Regera, this is a good one to go with. All right, let's move on. The Porsche 918 Spyder. This is a hybrid. This thing is crazy. It is a very, very good car. It trons really good. It accelerates really good. It's perfect. It's in the top 5. Where does it slot? I don't know, because it can't break any of the records. So at the end of the day, if you're looking for an alternative to the Regera and you like Porsches, this is a great car. It doesn't quite have the top speed as some of the other cars, but it still does handle very good. So just know your tracks. You're going to get walked on Big O, but all the short tracks, this thing's great, and it sounds really good, and it looks really good. It's got a lot of good pieces to it. All right, the engine that you put in it is the stock engine. You can't change that. That's the 4.6 liter V8 hybrid. For the parts, the first 4 are all Elite Platinum. You cannot change them, so then we come to the forced induction. What are we doing? We're putting the screw in there. You guys seeing a pattern? Screw, best acceleration. That's what you want. Go with it. Putting the single turbo in it doesn't change anything other than giving you about 30 horsepower, but you're losing about 170 foot-pounds of torque. No, 180. It's not worth it. So for that reason, you run the screw, because the single turbo doesn't give you any better top speed. It says this car does 233. It will do that, but that last 10 mile an hour, once you get to about 220, is slow to come. So this car is really better on the short track, so keep that in mind. It's out there. Elite Platinum bottle and NOS, of course. Elite Platinum road suspension, so that way you're hooking up with the pavement and getting the most out of it. Elite Platinum brakes. Elite Platinum grip tires. Elite Platinum clutch. And then your transmission, you've got options here. The 5, the 6, and the 7 speed all get you to the same top speed. I prefer closer gear ratios. The reason I prefer that, and there's going to be some other cars that factor into this, so keep this in mind. More gears, more better. There's a reason that F1 cars have 8-speed transmissions or 10 speeds, depending on what year they were doing it and stuff. But really, the way it comes down to it is when you have more gears to select from, you can, going into this corner, you're in the power in 5th. Going into this corner, you're in the power in 6th. You're slowing down, you're going in this corner, you're in the power band in 4th. Being able to select what gear is best to stay in the max power, the max torque range of the upper RPMs is good. That's better. When you go to a lower tier transmission, you have longer gears. And so what one corner might be best in 3rd, you either have to pick 2nd or 3rd or 3rd or 4th. Kind of like, because it's longer, you might not be in the power, you might be at the low end of 3rd gear, and so you're not quite in the power yet, and 2nd's too low because you're banging off the rev limiter. And so, like, I know it's kind of a long-winded explanation, but by default, you want to have more gears to choose from, so that way you can be in the best gear for the corner to make sure that you're getting the most power out of that car and you're accelerating. Also, if you've got a 3-bar of boost, if you short shift into the next gear and then you're at the very low end of the RPMs and you hit that boost and it carries you through that whole gear, that's going to be better with closer gear ratios, because there's very few cars where you're going to catch 2 gears during a boost window. And so more gears, more better, especially at the top end of things. So 7-speed transmission, you guys. Elite Platinum diff, just because I can. You guys can run the Sport Bronze, it doesn't matter. This car gets to 100% grip real easy. Auxiliary nitrous drift, nitrous grip as always. Handling, slide the slider 100% to the left. We're full grip on this one. Steering sensitivity 2 clicks high. Sound like a broken record here. Downforce, run it all the way low. It helps the car on the big end. If you find it to be a little too rowdy, crank it up and go all the way high with it. That's going to be a preference thing. You guys do whatever you want. Traction control off. Drift entry, that's brake tap for me. That is going to give you the Porsche 918 Spyder. 232 on the top speed. Like I said, it will get there, but it's 233 if we run it all the way low. It takes a minute. That last 10-15 mile an hour is a little slow to climb, so keep that in mind. It does have 1199 on your horsepower and 1214 on the torque, so it's got a lot of power. It's a great little car. If you've not driven this one and you've got some money to burn on S+, I think this is where it's at. The exhaust comes out the top right there, and it's so cool. It's a very, very cool car, very special car. Let's move on to another one. The Ferrari FXX-K Evo is awesome. It is a very good handling car. It is a very good accelerating car, and I definitely say it's in the top 3. People will ask which one's better, this one or the LaFerrari. This one is. The LaFerrari has less power, so overall it just doesn't perform as good. They both handle almost identical, but this one has more power, so you can get a little better top speed and it accelerates harder. So out of the two, this is the clear victor, no problem. And it's easier to unlock, so you get it sooner when you're unlocking your cars, and so overall it's just a clear victor in that. So I will not show you the LaFerrari. I do have a build on the channel for it, but this is the one between the two. Let me show you what we've got. The engine is the stock engine. There's only one for it, so it's the V12 6.3 liter. For the parts, the first 4 are all Elite Platinum. You cannot change those, so that stays the same. Elite Platinum screw supercharger, as we do. Guys, you can put in the turbo. It gives you a little more horsepower, but you're falling off on the torque. With this car, because the top end is what it is, better to get it all down low and win where you can with this. You're going to get walked by the REGERA and the Bugatti in a speed race, so don't try to compete there. Try to compete on the short track, and that's where that screw is going to take you. That's why I've got it in almost every single one of these builds. I think actually all of them, except for one, which is coming. We do run an Elite Platinum bottle of nitrous. Elite Platinum road suspension, that way you can get the most out of it. Elite Platinum brakes, those come factory. Elite Platinum grip tires. Elite Platinum clutch, that's factory, makes it really easy. And then out of the transmission options, you've got 3. You need to make sure that you equip the Super Gold 7-speed. I think that's what comes factory in it. The 5-speed, you can make a really crazy short track build with it, but it doesn't really improve anything. So run the 7-speed, Super Gold, that's the way to go. Elite Platinum differential, because why not? We're already here spending a boatload of money, but guys, you can run the Sport Bronze if you want. The car gets to 100% grip, no problem. Auxiliary is nitrous grip, nitrous drift, as we do. Get your micro drifts, get the most out of your yellow NOS and your, blue NOS and yellow boost, and that's where it's at. Handling, slide your slider all the way to the left. Every single one of these is a full grip build, because Gripium is meta in S class or S plus class. We're safe from the drifters there. Steering sensitivity, 2 clicks high, downforce all the way low. Give the car as much opportunity on the big end as possible, because it rips. This car hooks up really good. It Tron turns very predictably. It's fine with low downforce. That's how I run it, and I love it. It's butter. Traction control off. Drift entry is going to be brake tap. That's going to be the Ferrari FXX-K Evo. 235 on the top speed. That's all it does. Doesn't do much better than that at all, but it does get there. 1419 on your horsepower and 894 on the torque. That's why I say it's a good handling car. It's got a lot of horsepower, so we can push through and get you to a good top speed, but it doesn't have so much torque that it's super squirrely. It's very predictable. It's a great handling car. So between this or the LaFerrari, I'm going to have you guys build this one or recommend this one, because I think it is quite good. Alright, let's move on to what I think is probably the smoothest handling car in the video game. The McLaren F1. This car is fantastic. It looks good. You sit in the middle in it. Overall, this car has got so many things IRL that just I could go on for days. The reason my favorite number is 59, that's my race number, is because the very first time this car saw competitive racing, that was the number that they used, and they won in it. And so it's kind of some cool homage, and it's just a great car. I got the stock wheels on it because those are lit. I don't care what anybody says. Fight me. All right, overall, guys, this car's pretty good. It's kind of a jack of all trades, but specialist at nothing in this case. It's not super good on the short track, and it's not super good on the big end, but overall, it's really pretty sturdy. And if you're looking for an off-meta build, this slots right in with the Countach. This slots right in with the Ferrari FXX-K Evo. That car does handle a little better and accelerates just a skosh harder. So, I mean, it's a little lesser, a little more than some of them, but this does work better than the Q60. I will say that. Let's dig into it. Let me show you what we've got. The engine that you're going to put in this one, you guys, is the second to last engine. It is the 6.1 liter V12. It's a toss-up between the last two engines. You can go V10 or V12. The V10 is a little less horsepower and a little less torque. So the V12, the super gold one, is going to be the one I will choose for this build. I think it's quite nice. And then I'll give you a couple options for the induction in a moment. For the parts, the first 4, Elite Platinum, all of it. So it's Elite Platinum Induction, Elite Platinum ECU, Elite Platinum Fuel System, and Elite Platinum Exhaust. Now, you can do 2 things, in my opinion. You can do a lot of things, but 2 is what you're going to go with here. You can do the screw, which is going to give you a little bit better on the low end, and you're going to give away about 26 horsepower for that. You gain 13 foot-pounds of torque, and it makes the car accelerate a little better. That's nice. But it suffers on the big end. It's a little slow to accelerate when you're trying to get that top speed going, so the turbo helps with that. I personally prefer the turbo, but you guys might want to play with that. So if you do buy this car, if you did just get it given to you, whatever it might be in the game, try both of those and see what you think. That's going to be a preference thing, but I rather liked the turbo myself. Elite Platinum Nitrous, Elite Platinum Road Suspension, as we do, Elite Platinum Brakes, why not, and Elite Platinum Grip Tires. This car is a lot of fun. Before they updated stuff and made it so we couldn't build it down, this was actually really good in A+, but we can't put it there anymore. But the S-Class build is pretty good. It's on the channel, and it still holds up quite well. Elite Platinum Clutch, absolutely, because we are putting in the Silver Pro 6-speed transmission. You can do the 5 or the 6. There's not a huge difference on the top speed. You'll see it's just 1 mile an hour. The 6-speed doesn't even change the quarter mile or anything. Like, guys, there's not a huge difference, but the 6-speed, to me, having that extra gear there, more gears, more better, kind of like the consistency I've been talking to you guys about here. It just keeps the gear ratios set up I like the 6-speed. Not everybody's going to agree with that necessarily. That's going to be an opinion thing. So go with what you feel. When it comes down to the transmission, it's just what engine's best, and then you guys decide what you want to do with that. But I would say 6-speed in this case. Elite Platinum differential. You guys can run literally the Sport Bronze if you want, but we're an S+, we're bougie, so Elite Platinum. And then auxiliary is nitrous drift, nitrous grip. Handling, slide that slider all the way to the left, full Beyonce as we do. Steering sensitivity 2 clicks high, downforce all the way low, run it down, and then traction control off, drift entry, brake tap. I run the downforce all the way low because it doesn't really affect the top speed any. You lose about 1 mile an hour, but having it all the way low does help it perform on the big end, so that's going to be a little better for you guys. So go with what you feel in that case. I think it's actually pretty sturdy, but once again, it's a preference thing. 231 top speed, it'll do about 235 with that single turbo. That's another reason I like the turbo a little bit more than the screw supercharger. 894 for the horsepower and 647 for the torque. It's got a lot of power to weight because the car is light, but the reason it doesn't perform on the big end is because it's not quite pushing as many ponies as some of the other real good supercars we've got. So it's a great car. It does very well at S+, but it's probably towards the lower end of the list. So just be aware of that. But if you've already got it in the garage and you want to drive it, I think that you won't be upset with it. Just be aware of what you're getting into. All right, guys, that's the McLaren F1. Let's move on. This is the Aston Martin Vulcan. It is very good. Doesn't have the top speed, but it turns really good. It's very, very predictable. I'd say the Ferrari handles better, but it's a little bit more of a handful. You gotta kind of work into that. This car, I feel like most people that have been playing the game for a little while can just pick it up and just drive it really well. It's a lot of fun to drive. It looks really cool. It's just got all the pieces. So if you're looking for an off-meta, if you will, car that just turns really predictably and Tron turns very good, I think this is a good pick. I like it a lot. It's sweet. It's one of my favorite cars in S+. It just doesn't have the legs. So you'll see why in a minute. We get into the performance portion. The only engine you can run in it is the stock engine. So that's the 7.0 liter V12. The parts, you are gonna swoop everything and put it into Elite Platinum. So it's Elite Platinum induction, Elite Platinum ECU, Elite Platinum fuel system, and Elite Platinum exhaust. All paired to an Elite Platinum screw supercharger. Big surprise there. Elite Platinum bottle of nitrous. Elite Platinum road suspension. Elite Platinum brakes. And Elite Platinum grip tires. Elite Platinum clutch. Make sure you throw that in there. And then your transmission, you're going to run the Silver Pro 6-speed. You can run the 5 or the 6. You don't want the 5 in S+, you'll lose for sure because it only does 205. This one, the car, the reason it's rough in S+ class is because it just doesn't have the legs. 225 is not enough. You get walked on like 2/3 of the tracks just because they do have a top speed section. But on a few of the tracks that are short tracks, I really like this car. It feels really good. It's a lot of fun to drive. Elite Platinum differential is what I have in it, but guys, you can do just this Sport Bronze. It doesn't matter. It gets to 100% grip really easy. Auxiliary, nitrous drift, nitrous grip for those micro drifts. Handling, we slide the slider full Beyonce all the way to the left. Steering sensitivity 2 clicks high. That's me. It feels great there. Downforce all the way high. You're already not going to get anything out of the top end on this car, so lean into that. Make it super grippy, incredible downforce, and this car will just hook around all the corners, and it just feels really good to drive. Traction control off, drift entry, brake tap. That's the Aston Martin Vulcan, 225 top speed. That's the car's biggest downfall. If it had a 7-speed, this thing would be sick in S+. 1206 on the horsepower and 853 on the torque. So it's got a little less than some of the Ferraris, but it's got a little more torque. Overall, it's a really good car, but it just doesn't have the top speed. I think that overall, the devs in this game could have given us another transmission option, and it would have made this car far better. But it is what it is. Let me move on to the last car and show you some of the crazy stuff I've got on there. The last car on the list is going to be the Lotus Exige. I really don't care for this car because it just doesn't have the top speed, but a lot of people really do like it, and I'll admit it does handle very good and accelerates really hard, so it's definitely got a place on the list. You guys will notice I've got some crazy stuff going on with this one. That's the customs body kit that nobody can change, and I went and changed it. I love it because the exhaust comes right out the taillights. That's sick. It's got that big turbo on the back, which is insane. And then those are Need for Speed Infiniti wheels. It's kind of hard to see. And if I go into the styling, I really can't zoom in on it. That's kind of the best I can do for you right there, because if I go to change it, they don't show up. But that says Need for Speed in the wheels. Those are the Infiniti wheels. Those are not out yet. I bet you those come out later in a speed pass, or those are cool enough they'll probably charge you for a DLC. So let me just, spoiler alert, that's what you guys are getting into. I changed a few other things. I got rid of that battery terminal on the front, just put a regular hood on it, and it just made this car look so clean. I love the blue. I like those Infiniti wheels. I think they're sweet. Guys, when those drop, you can paint those any color you want, and they'll kind of shine like that. And there's a few other sets of Infiniti wheels. Drop a comment down below if you'd like me to do a video on all of the unreleased Speed Pass and DLC parts that I have access to, because there's a bit of a library of them. We've got lots of poses and clothes and a couple different sets of rims and just a few other things. And I don't know, I didn't feel like I really wanted to go down that rabbit hole, because if the EA man decided to take down my videos or whatever, I'd be a little salty about it. But honestly, come at me. Like, at this point, I'm done with Need for Speed. We've got a week left before we're moving on to the crew and some other things. There's not going to be a lot more content coming out because we built all the cars, and they're not giving us really any new tracks. They're not giving me anything to bring you guys content on. So I think the last piece that I could probably do is just all the unreleased stuff. And so if you guys want to see that, let me know. It's not that I'm just done playing Need for Speed. It's just I'm running out of things to make valuable content on. I mean, I could go on for days about stuff that is maybe entertainment, but I like to educate and build, and we're running out of stuff, guys. All right, let's get into the performance portion of this. The engine that we run for the best build that you can get out of this car is the last engine over. That is the Silver Pro 400 brake horsepower 3.0 liter V6. We double the horsepower on that one. Guys, I tried all the engines and I built them all the way out. You'll see that they're all S+. This is roughly 140 to 200 horsepower more than all the rest of them, so make sure that you grab this engine. I will say that the top speed is best with the 1.8 liter i4, but you'll never get there because you are literally lacking like 250 horsepower, 260. It's just not worth. So make sure that if you are building this out, you are not looking at the top speed, you are looking at the horsepower, and that's what we really need to make sure you can compete in S+ class. For the parts, it is Elite Platinum everything. So it's Elite Platinum Induction, Elite Platinum ECU, Elite Platinum Fuel System, and Elite Platinum Exhaust. Now, this is where the community is going to be a little separated. I think, personally, if you're going to build this car out, you put the single turbo. Run the Elite Platinum single turbo. The screw's not bad. It's between the two. The screw gives you a little more torque, 29 less horsepower. So you're losing about twice as much horsepower as you're gaining in the torque for that stat. This car is already super light. It's one of the lightest cars in the game, so that's why it can do so much with so little horsepower in comparison to the rest of all the cars I just showed you. The difference in top speed between these two is considerable. This one says it does 221, but really you got to redline tech it and pray, and it only does about 220. With redline tech you can get about 223. With the single turbo, you can get about 227. In S+, you're going to get walked by all the cars that go 235, 240, 245. So you need to get on the big end as much as you can. Run the single turbo. It gives you the most on the top end of things. This car has no problem reaching its top speed. It accelerates really hard, point blank. And so run the single turbo to get the max out of the big end. So at least this car is really well rounded. You're not going to be like, oh, the single turbo just doesn't feel as good. You're not going to say that. This car feels fine with the single turbo. I did plenty of testing today before I brought you this build because I really wanted to bring you the most optimal corn nut build that we could for you guys, and this is definitely it. Elite Platinum bottle of nitrous, Elite Platinum road suspension, Elite Platinum brakes, and Elite Platinum grip tires. Elite Platinum clutch, absolutely. You want to make sure you buy the clutch for this, you guys, because there's a lot of shifting. Because we put on the Elite Platinum 8-speed transmission. Earlier in the video, I covered more gears, more better. Better opportunity to be in the power. When you're running the 8-speed, this thing gets out of the, well, it gets out of the gear quickly, but what it does is the turbo has a range at the very top end of the gear where it makes its power. And it gives you the hardest punch out of all of it. The supercharger is kind of like a linear power curve. It's like it gives you all the power at the start, and it's just kind of a line. Whereas the turbo is like slow to ramp, and then it just peaks really high, and so you get all this extra boost. You want that, and when you have closer gear ratios, you're hitting that more often, and then you've got all these extra gears to choose from to make sure you're in the right gear for the right corner. And with an Elite Platinum clutch, you can run through the gears really quickly, and it is fire for an automatic. So overall, if you're building this car, run the 8-speed, go to town. It gives that turbo the best opportunity to do its work, and it makes that last gear really feel quite good because you're in the power the whole time. And then when you're turning and getting out of the power, you're in the turbo range, and it's just happy. Whereas if you were to run the supercharger, which is the best alternative to this, the screw only makes its power on the first part of the RPM range. So really, it's kind of 6 on one, half dozen on the other. This car is going to be pretty ridiculous no matter what you do. But I really do say that the 8-speed is the way to go. It's my preference, and all the guys that run it that we've tested with, we all say the 8-speed's fire. Elite Platinum diff, you don't need it. This car goes 100% grip, no problem. You can get away with just the Sport Bronze, but you definitely at least need the Sport Bronze. And then auxiliary is nitrous drift, nitrous grip. Handling, slide the slider all the way to the left, 100% full Beyonce. We're gripping and ripping. Steering sensitivity, I run 2 clicks high. This car is twitchy, it's fast, it turns in, it's solid. Downforce all the way low. Guys, give this car the best opportunity that it can to try to get on the big end, because with a little redline tech and some boost, you might see 230 on the top end. That's pretty solid, really. Previous builds of this car, some other people have done different things. I've seen people with the wrong engine in it, and if you're going to run S+, you need to be able to get on the big end. At least with this and the turbo, you can maybe see 230. You're still going to get walked by all the cars. That's why I say this is mid, but if you pick the right tracks, this is a force to be reckoned with. It's not my preference, but it does get it done. Traction control off, drift entry is brake tap. That's the Lotus Exige S, 224 top speed. With redline tech, you'll see about 230 with some boost. 809 on your horsepower and 618 on your torque. Those stats seem a lot lower than all the other cars we looked at, but this thing is like almost half the weight of those other cars. It is light. It is one of the lightest cars in the game, and so for that reason, the power to weight ratio is through the moon, and it's fast. If you haven't built this one out, maybe give it a look. I like all the other previous cars. I'll run the Vulcan and the 918 and pretty much all the other ones I've already showed you before I picked this one. But if you're looking for one of the cars that isn't $1 million to buy into, and then you just upgrade it as you do, this is pretty sturdy. And it's one of the only cars that I could get those Infiniti wheels on, because they're not available for all the cars right now with the way the coding is in the game. So if I was going to bring you the car, I was going to bring it to you in S+, and I wanted to kind of show off some of the cool stuff that's coming. So that's what I got. That is a list of a ton of S+ cars for you guys. Hopefully there's one on the list you haven't seen before, and if you're looking for some recommendations, all these cars have got their place. They're all pretty solid. So it really is just, what do you like, what can you afford, what are you into? Make sure you have the REGERA, because it is the best, period. It's a lot faster than this, everywhere. But that's going to do it for me. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. I stream on Kick, I stream on YouTube, and there's more racing games to come, and I'm going to be playing all those, and you guys can come chase me down in that. I'd love to have you along. Subscribe if you haven't. That's the best way to get notifications, and I'd like to have you join us on a live stream. We have a lot of fun. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.